John Parker had always been proud of the fact that he lived a healthy life. At age 42, he had a stable job as a civil engineer, had some success, and saved enough money to build his family a nice home in a quiet neighborhood. He believed in being honest and loyal, and he brought these values into his marriage to Lisa, the girl he fell in love with in high school. Lisa Parker, who is 39 years old, has been a wonderful wife and mother. In her spare time, she worked as a visual artist, working full-time and raising their only child, Emily. Emily was 16 years old and extremely smart. She was known for her love of music and closeness with her folks. It looked like the Parkers were a great family. They went to events in the neighborhood, cooked barbecues, spent time on family trips together. John always thought he was lucky to have a girlfriend who was there for him, and a child who made him happy, but one tragic evening, everything changed. It was a clear, cold night that made you think of winter to come. John was excited to surprise his family with a home-cooked meal when he got home early from work. His grandma taught him how to make stamus lasagne, and he brought the smell of it. He heard laughter coming from inside the house as he got to the front door. Even though it was a nice sound, it made him stop. He was about to open the door when he heard a loud noise. A quiet conversation caught his attention. Driven by a sense of something being strange, curiosity, he should press his ear against the door. At first, all he could make out was nonsense that he couldn't understand. Then he recognized Emily's excited voice. "Mom, the Johnson your guy has is great. Thanks for letting me know about him. You are welcome to join him next time." John was hit over the head with the words. His heart was beating very fast, and he felt a chill go down his spine. He had always thought Lisa and him were growing apart, but he never thought she would fail him so badly. As he tried to process what he had just heard, his mind was racing. Emily had talked. She knew more about her mother's partner than a normal friend would allow. Johnson's name brought up a more personal link, and Lisa's casual comment about joining and made it clear. John was shocked and took a step back from the door. The lasagna fell from his hands and broke on the doorstep. He looked like the world had fallen apart around him as he stood there in shock. He turned away from the house quickly and didn't look back. He needed space to think and breathe. He was angry, hurt, and unable to believe what he was thinking. John's sudden exit was hard to understand. A man left a letter that said, "I can't stay. I need time to work things out along with some things in a bag. Please keep my privacy safe." He didn't say where he was going or when he might come back. Once a warm and funny place, the house was now strangely quiet. Lisa was confused and sad for a few days after John disappeared. He was nowhere to be found when she looked for him. Their neighbors and friends were also confused, and rumors spread about their sudden and strange exit. Emily stayed, silent, torn between her love for her parents and the shame of what she had done. Her teenage confidence is dying because she feels so bad about herself. At the same time, John had left his old life behind and moved to a small house he rented in the woods. In his free time, he tried to deal with the shock and think about what to do next. There was so much hurt that it seemed like it would never get better. He had always been an active man, and deep down he knew that leaving would not be enough. John hired Mark Turner, a skilled private investigator, to find out what happened. Toller was respected for being smart and skilled, and he quickly became an important friend. John's ask was simple: find out the truth about Lisa's relationship with her boss, Richard Evans, who was a rich and important businessman who just moved to town. Turner's investigation revealed a scary picture. Had a reputation for being both nice and brutal. He often kept his business dealings secret, and rumors of crime followed him around everywhere he went. The detective found out that Lisa and Richard's relationship went beyond cheating. They had a lot to do with a web of greed and illegal behavior. The whole town felt Richard's impact, and he did not always act in a good way. John was shocked to find out that Lisa had not only lied to him but also let Emily into this dangerous world. Lisa's friendship with Richard put their child in danger, and the gravity of the situation was too much to handle. The final blow was when it was found out that Lisa had helped Richard do illegal things. John had a strong feeling. Misled not only by his wife but also by everyone he had trusted before. Together with Turner's help, John gathered proof of Richard's wrongdoings and Lisa's part in them. The process was time-consuming, but the proof was strong. The final blow came when John realized Lisa had used her access to Richard's resources to help him do illegal things, which made her guilty of many crimes. John took action because he felt it was the right thing to do and he needed to put things to rest. He gave the police the information Turner had gathered, and soon Richard Evans and Lisa Parker were being charged with serious crimes. The case got a lot of attention from the media. John's name wasn't used very often. His plan to get revenge worked, but it cost a huge number of lives. His family had been killed, and Emily had to deal with a world that had changed in a way that could not be undone. Although Lisa and Richard were in court, John tried to stay away from all the chaos. He had to start over with his life, leaving his past behind. Even though treason hurt a lot, he thought that the scars would fade over time. He had no idea that this was the beginning of a new part of his life that would test his strength and change the way he thought about family and forgiveness. It had been 5 years since John Parker's life was turned upside down when he found out that his wife Lisa had been having an affair with Richard Evans. Thoughts of time had. He had been given the chance to heal, but the wounds from his past stayed deep in his heart. John had moved to a small town far from his home and was now working as a civil engineering expert on his own. For the most part, he had been able to keep his life somewhat normal, but the ghosts of his past life kept coming back to haunt him. John's new life was very calm, very different from the crazy one he had left behind. The small town setting was relaxing, giving a break from the fast-paced life he had before. He now lived in a small house on the edge of town. When being alone was more of a comfort than an empty space, he spent his days doing the same things over and over again, like working from home, meeting new people, and finding comfort in being alone. But the feeling of unresolved problems from his past kept coming back to haunt him, giving him sleepless nights and brief memories of better times. John was going through a lot of papers in his study one sunny autumn afternoon when he heard a knock on the door. He doesn't usually have friends, so it came as a surprise. When he opened the door, he saw a young woman standing in the doorway. She looked pale and worried. Her head had been shaved, and her eyes were hollow with fear and giving up. John thought she wasn't her for a second. "Dad," the woman said in a trembling voice. John's heart skipped a beat. He recognized her immediately as Emily, his daughter. The sight of her so changed from the vibrant teenager he had once known. He was struck by a mix of shocked and deeply regretful. "Hi, Emily," John asked in a voice that was almost a whisper. "What happened to you?" Emily was nervous to go into the house. As she sat in a chair, she was clearly scared and shaking. John quickly got her a tea, and his hands were shaking the whole time. He sat down next to her and tried to understand how bad things were. "The story is very long." Emily's voice began to crack. "I didn't know where else to go." John paid close attention as Emily talked about the last 5 years of her life. After John left suddenly, Lisa had a hard time dealing with the results of her actions. Her legal problems and Richard's arrest had caused chaos in the family, and Lisa had to make more and more desperate decisions. Emily, who was now a teenager dealing with the loss of her family's stability, felt alone. Because Richard's mother was involved in his criminal activities, they were cut off from their community and friends. As Lisa's financial situation got worse, she became more involved with Richard's remaining network of corrupt associates. These people had a big impact on their lives and cast a dark shadow over Emily's adolescence. Despite everything, Emily tried to keep things normal by doing well in school and turning to her music as an escape. Over time, her mother's decisions started to put a strain on her mental health. Lisa's unstable behavior and need for money made her make a series of bad choices that put Emily in a dangerous situation. Emily's voice got softer as she talked about a particularly scary time. "Mom got involved with some of Richard's old friends. They weren't just criminals, they were dangerous people. They threatened us, and when Mom couldn't pay them off, they took it out on me." John's heart sank as Emily told H. It was clear that Lisa's choices had put Emily in a lot of pain that no child should ever have to go through. Details that shocked and hurt me were given. Emily had experienced psychological abuse and fear, and she had been forced to do things that made her feel bad. Scarred. Emily's mother tried very hard to keep her safe, but she couldn't protect her from the consequences of being part of Richard's network. Emily kept talking, and she said that as she tried to get away, her life had gotten even worse. She was able to get out of her mother's house, but not without some problems. Her flight was a panicked attempt to save herself, which is why she went to several places to find safety and left as soon as she felt safe. She was wearing torn clothes to show how badly she had been hurt. EM said with tears in her eyes, "I couldn't stay with Mom anymore. She kept telling me things would get better, but they only got worse. I had to leave to stay alive. I didn't even know if you'd even heard of me. Want to see me, but I had nowhere else to go." John's heart ached as he took in Emily's words. He had been so consumed by his own sense of betrayal and the quest for justice that I didn't want this to happen, I thought. I believed I was doing the right thing by leaving. I didn't realize how much you were suffering. Emily nodded, her expression a mix of relief and persistent anguish. "It's not your fault, Father. I only needed to find you. I wasn't sure what else to do." John grasped Emily's hand and gently held it. He saw the vulnerability in her eyes and realized that restoring their connection would be a difficult and delicate task. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in years, John felt a fresh sense of purpose. His kid needed his support and affection, and he was determined to give her both. "Let us start by getting you situated." John remarked, straightening up. You're safe here now, we will work things out together. You are not alone. As they began to talk about the next steps, John realized their adventure was far from ended. The shadows of the past lingered, but they had the opportunity to carve a fresh route forward. The wounds of betrayal and the repercussions of previous grudges would need to be handled, but the link between father and daughter was a glimmer of hope in the midst of gloom. John's choice to take Emily marked the start of a new chapter in their lives, one that would test their strength and question their. They had both been through unbearable hardships, but together they would face the ghosts of their past and work to make a future free of the shadows of their old lives. Emily's sudden return had devastated John Parker's peaceful life. Finding out about her pain and the lingering shadows of his own past set off a storm of emotions that John tried to control. But amidst the chaos, one thing became clear: he had to protect his daughter, while also facing the remnants of the evil world that had had such a big impact on their life. In the weeks that followed, John worked on giving Emily a sense of normalcy. He enrolled her in a nearby high school and started looking into therapy for her mental wounds. Their daily routine began to settle, but the weight of their shared history hung over them. Hearing her talk about her plans for the future was a great way to connect with her, but it didn't take away from the serious threats that were still hanging over them. Despite her calm demeanor, John knew that Richard Evans' criminal network was far from broken up. His friends were even more desperate and dangerous now that Richard was in jail, and Lisa's short time there didn't stop Richard's friends from seeking revenge or continuing their illegal activities. There was tension in the air, and John knew that to protect Emily, he had to deal with these lingering threats head-on. One evening, while John and Emily were eating dinner, the phone rang. John's heart raced when he picked it up and recognized the caller ID. It was Mark Turner, a private detective who had helped him before. Mark's voice, Mark, who was usually cool and collected, told John, "I've been tracking Richard's associates, and it looks like they're planning something big. I'm worried they're after you and Emily." John was shocked by the news. He had thought that by getting rid of Richard he would be safer, but the rest of Richard's network was still a major threat. "Are you sure about this?" John asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Yes," Mark replied. "I was able to gather and report on their activities. They're out for revenge and have been tracking your movements. They're bound to act eventually." John's mind raced as he tried to come up with a plan. He knew that confronting the attacker directly would be dangerous, but he couldn't hide. He had seen what happened when people tried to avoid. This time he had to take a stand. "Okay, Mark, what would you suggest we do?" John asked, his voice steady. Mark's suggestion was reasonable. "First, protect your house and make sure Emily's safety. I'll get some of my contacts to protect you. Meanwhile, let's look into their intentions and see if we can get ahead of them." With Mark's plan in action, John started making his house safer by adding more security measures and lowering his profile to avoid any patterns that could help burglars find him. Even with these precautions, the stress never stopped. Every creak in the house and every passing car made him nervous. A week later, John and Emily were having a nice evening at home when they heard a loud bang at the door. John's instincts were on high alert. He looked through the peephole and saw Mark Turner, who looked nervous and messy. "John, we have a problem," Mark said as John answered the door. "They're making a move tonight. We must leave right away." John felt panicked, but he tried to stay calm. What was going on? Their plan had been broken. Mark said, "I have reason to believe they are coming for you right now, and they are not alone. We don't have much time. Grab everything you can, and let's go." John quickly packed a few things and made sure Emily was ready to leave. He could see the worry in her eyes, but he gave her a comforting smile and said, "We'll be okay. Please stay with me." Mark took them to a safe place, a safe house set up by his contacts that was very different from where John usually lived. It was a heavily fortified home on the outskirts of town with surveillance and defense measures. John and Emily settled in, but they were still in danger. As night fell, Mark's contacts kept an eye on them. John, Emily, and Mark waited anxiously in silence for hours, and each minute seemed like it would never end. Finally, at midnight, the sound of breaking glass broke the silence. The invaders had broken through the perimeter. Mark's contacts acted quickly, resulting in a tense confrontation with the attackers. John and Emily gathered in a safe area, their hearts racing as they heard muffled sounds of fighting outside. John's thoughts were racing as he tried to stay calm for Emily's sake. He could hear the attackers' voices, mixing with the sounds of fighting. The safe house's security measures were working well, but it was clear that the situation was serious. The sounds of the fighting stopped for what seemed like hours, but the nightmare wasn't over. Mark walked into the room, both relieved and sad. "They're gone," he said. His voice sounded tired. "But it's not over. We need to find out who is behind this and bring them to justice." John and Emily were shocked, but unharmed. The immediate threat was gone, but what happened that night made them realize how bad their situation was. John realized that they needed to act quickly to stop the threats that were hanging over them. In the days that followed, Mark stepped up his investigation into Richard's connections. With the help of police, they were able to locate key people, members of the criminal network, and get evidence that led to their arrests. It was hard work, but they finally made progress when they found important information linking the remaining colleagues to a planned attack on the safe house. The final confrontation was quick and decisive. Based on the evidence obtained, law enforcement launched a series of raids that dismantled the remaining parts of Richard's network. The arrests were widely publicized, and criminal operations that had previously threatened John and Emily's lives were revealed. Lisa's legal problems persisted, but they were small compared to the destruction of Richard's criminal business. John turned his attention to rebuilding the group. After the trauma, John and Emily were able to start over with their lives, without having to worry about being hurt again. They had been through unimaginable hardships, but they came out of them stronger and smarter. The hardships had tested their relationship, but it had been strengthened. John and Emily focused on healing and making progress in their lives. The wounds of the past would never go away, but they had faced the darkness together and come out with a better future. They found comfort in each other's company and worked hard to create a life that showed their determination and hope for a better tomorrow. The final fight wasn't just a battle against outside threats, it was also a journey of rediscovery and forgiveness. John and Emily had freed their lives from the shadows of the past, and they were determined to face the future with courage and hope. They didn't know what lay ahead, but they faced it together, held together by their strength and unbreakable friendship.